Welcome back to the Worm Whisperer channel, where I provide you with the best information of all things worms. Today, we will be discussing the topic should you have a drain in your worm bin. Worm composting is a great way to turn kitchen scraps and yard waste into nutrient-rich compost, but should you have a drain in your own worm bin? Let's find out. Worm composting bins typically come with a spigot at the bottom that can be used to drain excess liquid from the bin. This liquid is known as worm tea leachate and is a nutrient-rich fertilizer that can be used to water your plants. However, some worm farmers argue that having a drain in your worm bin can actually be detrimental to your worms. When you drain the excess liquid from your worm bin, you are also draining away some of the valuable nutrients that your worms need to thrive. This can lead to a decrease in the number of worms in your bin and may lead to a slower composting process. Additionally, draining too much liquid from your worm bin can cause the bedding material to become too dry, which can also be harmful to your worms. Since worms need moisture to breathe through their skin, having a drain could actually make the bin too dry and the worms can suffocate. On the other hand, some people argue that having a drain in your worm bin is necessary to prevent the bin from becoming too wet. If the bedding material in your worm bin becomes too wet, it can lead to anaerobic conditions which can be harmful to your worms. Having a drain in your worm bin can help to regulate the moisture levels and prevent the bedding material from becoming too wet. Ultimately, whether or not you should have a drain in your worm bin depends on your specific situation. If you have a small worm bin and are diligent about monitoring the moisture levels, you may not need a drain. However, if you have a large worm bin or are prone to overfeeding your worms, a drain may be necessary to prevent the bedding material from becoming too wet. Personally, I would recommend that new worm farmers start with a drain of some sort in their first worm bin. I have personally seen many new worm farmers that had worm bins so wet that they look like mud. This can hurt the worms and cause anaerobic conditions that we discussed earlier in the video. New worm farmers tend to have wetter bins, so having a drain works. If you are an experienced worm farmer, then most of the time you are better at managing moisture levels using carbon in your worm bin. So, if it works for you, great. If not, then you really don't need to have one. If you decide not to use a spigot in your worm bin, remember to control the moisture in your worm bin using aerated worm bedding such as shredded cardboard or newspaper. Remember, you don't want to confuse a worm bin drain with air holes for your worms to breathe. The worms will need good airflow throughout the bin, so never forget to add these to your worm bin. Okay, so should you have a drain for your worm bin? The answer is, it depends. Consider your specific situation and whether or not a drain would be beneficial for your worms. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more informative videos to help you with your worm farming. Thank you for watching and happy worm farming, everybody. See you next time.